Around America, there are hundreds of paranormal teams. In central Pennsylvania, there's one team known for their abilities and results, Mo Valley Paranormal. Join us now for a look into the world of hauntings and how the experts investigate the occurrences. This is Mo Valley Paranormal Live with Dave Shannon and Tyson Lidgett.
News Talk 970 WBLF. It is time once again for our regular weekly get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation of it, otherwise known as Mo Valley Paranormal Live. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
And once again, we're set to talk about investigating the paranormal and any other things about it that we know of. One thing we cannot do, since we pre-record the show,
right,
is tell you what went on, even though the lockdown has happened. For those of you listening on radio, maybe you were there. We can't review that because we're recording this on Thursday, so we don't really know what did go on. We're hoping that there is plenty of activity while we go there. But, it may not necessarily be that way either. We've talked about that. So we'll let you know what did happen of late, especially the October lockdown was an extremely active one.
Yes.
And so the big thing is we hope that some folks who may not have been there before went ahead and signed up for the lockdown, because we've talked about the sale of the property and that maybe it's, maybe the last time that there is a paranormal investigation inside the old Clearfield County Jail. So hopefully
possibly.
You got there.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah. So that being said, it's not as though, it's not going to be a place we want to see go as far as somewhere where you could go to investigate. But hey, business, property, that kind of stuff, outside of somebody buying a property specifically for paranormal investigation, they're going to disappear from time to time. That's just the way it's going to happen.
And if I had the extra 300G sitting around, I would buy it up and we could use it all the time. But
yeah. And you could rent it out to famous paranormal groups.
Right.
Now, the one thing is, if you want Ghost Adventures to come, you got to come up with some kind of a demonic entity inside the old Clearfield
I'm sure they could. I'm sure they could create enough of their own, so that'd be all right.
But that it is amazing to me how many, because of the amount of television programming, the paranormal reality TV that's out there, how many places have been purchased specifically for the idea of allowing people to come in and investigate. So although that's probably not what's going to happen with the old Clearfield County Jail, I'm sure some other activity will take place there. If you were going to buy a place, it would be the Reed Funeral Home. I mean, based on, and I haven't even been there yet, but based on hearing you talk about it, if that were, if there were to be a purchase of a property by Mo Valley Paranormal and Tyson Lidgett, I'd have to say is Reed Funeral Home.
Yeah, if I had the income and the resources to buy that place, that would actually be, you're right, that would be at the top of the list, because it's pretty reliable with activity every time we're there.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and of course, one of the things is, too, once you buy it, it's like any property that you buy. That's not where the story ends. You end up, if A, you've got maintenance on the property. Mm-hmm. B, if you open it up for a paranormal investigation, now you got new insurance things that you have to take care of. And it just goes on. And for me, not having seen the Reed Funeral Home, there would be a temptation on my part to turn it into a, I don't know how much room there is in the upstairs, but I consider making it a haunted bed and breakfast as well.
Yeah, you could. I mean, you could do it. I mean, that's right. You've never seen the Reed Funeral Home, have you?
No, I've never been there.
You are going to have to remedy that this Halloween, because that's on the slate. So you're going to have to
Yes.
change that.
Yes, absolutely. But bottom line is, we don't know what is going to happen. We tried to stress that in the lead up to the lockdown at the Clearfield County Jail. So hopefully you did get a chance to visit it. And it may not, it depends on who the new owners are and, whether they're going to allow access into the building. It could be somebody like, that has super secret stuff inside. And they don't want people, prowling
Snooping
around
right.
just to do paranormal investigation.
Yeah.
Or it could just be somebody that doesn't, appreciate paranormal investigation and could care less about it and decide not to allow access to it. So, but, we'll see what happens as that progresses. Things change, and that's another thing that will change. But as I say, I mean, the Mo Valley Paranormal crew has been able to come up with a lot of areas that and places to go that do provide, a somewhat consistent activity during previous investigations have certainly proven to have activity when you're there. So, but you hate to lose one, especially as cool as the Clearfield County Jail is.
Well, I'm really excited about announcing our next lockdown location, which that's one of the benefits to coming to lockdowns, because you get inside information. Whoever comes to lockdowns, you hear the announcement first where the next lockdown is going to be, and you have the chance to think about that. If you're going to jump on it as soon as the reservation's open, you've already decided if you're going to go or not, and you have first shot. So I'm really excited to announce where the next lockdown will be, and that's like Dave has said. Even though we're recording Thursday, our lockdown will be Saturday. So by next week, when you hear this radio station, you will know by our Facebook page where the next lockdown event will be. So I'm pretty excited to announce where that's going to be held at.
All right, stay tuned, and all that info will be coming up. If you haven't friended Mo Valley Paranormal's Facebook page, you need to do that, and that kind of gets you on the inside track as to what will be coming up for Mo Valley Paranormal in the coming months. And of course, one of the things, you've utilized the lockdowns in a charitable way over the course of time. People may, ask questions about, whatever fees involved, which is not, I don't think it's based on places you've been, Tyson, what some of the fees charged
Absolutely.
to go into a building are. So these are very reasonable by comparison.
Yeah, I mean, this, even if you get down to, let's say, Gettysburg, and you do most of them like 3 hours, you do a 3-hour tour, and you'll pay anywhere from, $70 to $100, depending upon what tour you jump on. If that's like one of the, the tours where you have to use equipment and go late at night and stuff like that, you'll easily pay, upwards of $70 to $100 per person, depending upon where you go. So the $45 per person we charge is not, a lot in my opinion, because you get to use the equipment. We do an overnight 6-hour investigation, and, I provide, refreshments throughout the night and before you go home. So I don't think it's a costly event whatsoever.
Yeah. So that's been set up, and it's for the cost, and then you take that money and roll it over into charities. And one of your biggest ones is the kids, the Toys for Kids.
Yes, the Christmas Crusade for Kids through Magnum Broadcasting.
So and then you helped out with the Mo Valley football team.
Yep, that was last year. We did Rob Reed and I teamed up, and we did a special 3-hour investigation of his house, and then we all went to the Shannon Valley Black Knight football team, the high school team, and we donated $1,100 to them for that. So, and
it's really, it's great to be able to give back like that, and that's something. I guess you made that a somewhat of a priority, that not only to do the paranormal investigating, but to also be an important part of the community. You're not just there for the well, I was going to say fame and fortune, but
Yeah.
I don't know how much of either of those you end up with as a paranormal investigator, whether you're Mo Valley Paranormal or somebody else. But to be able to contribute back into the community the way you guys have has been a real something. It was like when I first met you and we first started to do the show. It's like, this guy's really cool. Not only does he know
I'm glad
the paranormal
you think so.
stuff.
Well, I mean,
not only do you know the paranormal stuff, you're helping people out too.
and that was always the number one thing. If you are not a viable part of your community, and you have a business out there and you're not giving back somehow, then why are you part of that community? Because you should be working with that community to help with endeavors. And it's just one of the things that we do. It's one of the things we like to do. So that's what we do.
Yeah. And it's always great too to see the payback, the smiles that come onto in the case of kids, smiles that come onto the kid's face because and it was because in part of something that you did to make that child's day a much better one. And no matter what age the child is, and to see that you were able to help a football team. And we hear these crazy stories about how much money is spent in the state of Texas on football.
Yeah.
And to know that, there's Mo Valley needs to get outside help to keep, and make the football program better there. But some of the things, some of the stadiums that they built in Texas for high school football are bizarre.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to be paying the taxes in any of those school districts. Let me just put that out there. By the way, if you ever want to join us, 814-272-9700 is the phone number to call. And it is Mo Valley Paranormal Live. We get together every week. Tyson and I do, and discuss the paranormal and the investigation of it. We're going to continue to do that, and we'll do so right after we take a commercial timeout. You're listening to News Talk 970 WBLM. Welcome back to Mo Valley Paranormal Live on News Talk 970 WBLF. It's our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation thereof. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
And if you don't know, Tyson is the founder and lead investigator of Mo Valley Paranormal, our top-notch local paranormal investigating group. I'm Dave Shannon, and I'm just a casual onlooker. Skin in the game is what Tyson has, and we were just talking about the charitable nature of Mo Valley Paranormal. And when I say skin in the game, you've got that, plus you've got the amount of money that you've invested into paranormal investigating equipment. And one of the things we do prior to taking the air is we'll discuss, whether we've seen any new paranormal investigating equipment or whether it's something that we, would want to talk about with you during the show. And there's not a whole lot out there right now, maybe outside of this SLS camera or some sort of equivalent of the SLS camera that it's been interesting to me. Sometimes I think they stretch a little bit. We've talked about that because I think that Zach Bagans, will tend to think in order for some of that to be true, what Zach thinks when they see things on the SLS, you have to believe in leprechauns because some of these figures are so tiny.
Yeah.
That show up in the SLS. And at which point that's the only thing in my mind that comes to mind is like, so you must be talking about, leprechauns.
Yeah, or an elf or something.
Yeah, some kind of elemental that, we don't normally talk about on this show. And there are, a number, maybe quite a number of people that believe in the existence of elementals, and that some of the things that go on that are paranormal in nature are believed to be caused by those types of entities, the elementals that may be around. Even remember Jason Hawes bringing that up during a Ghost Hunters episode.
Yes. Yeah, that was surprising. Well, no, I mean, not surprising to hear him, say, like, I think he mentioned sprites or something like that. And, all those are, fairies, sprites, elves, gnomes, those are all kind of elementals, quote unquote elementals, or things that, guard nature, created by nature. So, yeah, it was. That's been dropped once or twice by him in the show.
But outside taking those away, there have been any number of things that have happened on the television, the paranormal reality that's out there. There have been any number of times where something has shown up on those that you look at and say, I can't explain it other than it's actually mapping out a spirit in some way, shape, or form. Now, once again, what it does is it creates a stick figure based on energy. So then there's an assumption that in some way, shape, or form, the spirit world is presenting itself as a stick figure, or as a human body, because depending on how they calibrate it, you'll see one of the investigators walk into a shot and it maps those out as a stick figure as well. Mm-hmm. So the assumption would be then that somehow the spirit world is presenting itself in a human form. And I don't know that that's always the case. Yes, it is in some cases. And, the shadow figures that we see, the apparitions that are seen are human, but not all the time. There's a correlation between the spirit world and energy. And I don't think a ball of energy is necessarily going to present itself as a stick figure.
Right.
So
I've often wondered, Dave, if that camera, if it picks up something, whether it be a good sized dust mote or something like that it can see, and then turns into an anomaly. If it just defaults and depending upon the size of whatever is there, it becomes a stick figure. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sold on the tiny ghost dancing on top of Aaron Goodwin's head and stuff like that on those shows. So,
but and for one of those, you'll end up with one that ends up. We've talked about this. The Ghost Adventures guys at a prison, and there was like a little theater at that prison, and there was no doubt that there were people performing on the stage.
That was pretty convincing. That they had like 5 stick figures all going through the motion of playing different instruments. Mm-hmm. That one I got to give them. I mean, that one was pretty interesting to see that appear and then disappear and then never reappeared again. So that one I got to give to them.
Yeah. So I guess that could be said of any piece of equipment that's used for paranormal investigation. There are some that just provide things that it's like, okay, I got to buy into that. The other one, one of the other ones that I remember with an SLS is the gut punches that were given to Nick Groff when he was on Ghost Adventures, when he was lying in a bed in Chula Vista Hospital. And this was one of the early expeditions, so to speak, with the SLS camera. And there was a figure beside the bed, and it started to punch. It made a motion, the arm, because it doesn't render hands.
Right.
But, it was making this motion like it was trying to strike him. And right where it was striking him, he was grabbing for his side like he was being punched by someone. And that's the other one that I remember of the SLS camera adventures that ended up being pretty darn convincing when you see it. So that's the bottom line. It's like any other piece of equipment. People would argue. It's like I remember, I think it was when you guys invited me to join you in Bedford at the Bedford County Jail. And I think it was it one of the deputy sheriffs was with us that evening?
Yes.
And he had already made up his mind, I think, about the fact that some of the things that happen with the equipment, you know, whether it be EMF or whatever it is, are just natural changes in the environment, and those devices pick it up. And he didn't really necessarily believe in any of the equipment that was being used for investigative purposes.
It was funny though, because I remember getting there, and if you remember, we're all standing at the bottom of the main stairwell at the front of the courthouse.
Yeah.
And then we heard the whistle, and I'm like, everybody heard that, right? And we're all standing right there, and he says, well, I heard that. And I said, well, nobody we saw whistled, and there was nobody in the courthouse. So I mean, he kind of had to, you know, think about that one for a little bit. But I think we left there.
There's no changes in environment. I mean, yes, there can be whistling noises in any property because of wind, you know, and cracks and in the building or whatever, or a window has a crack in it or whatever. So you will hear, you know, some kind of a whistling noise. But that's when you get that two-tone whistle, which is the same thing that I got in an EVP from our last lockdown.
Right.
That you just kind of sit there and go, wow, you know, that really catches your attention.
Yeah, and that's what it was. I mean, it's a kind of whistle where someone's trying to get your attention, like over here or something. But when I did the reveal with the courthouse a couple weeks later, and a lot of people from the courthouse were in with me doing the presentation, I think that he may not have been a full believer, but he had to at least consider things that maybe were not, you know, just ambient energy changes.
Yeah, because when you get to a point with any of that and you're asking questions, and then you, depending on the device or whatever, you start to get intelligent interaction. In other words, it's not like a REM pod went off randomly or flashlights started going off randomly. It's like they're going on and off based on your, you know, a question, and then asking it to be turned off, and it gets turned off. So, as we call it, intelligent interaction. So, at any rate, speaking of intelligent, oh, wait, it's paranormal reality TV, so maybe we're not talking about that, but we'll do it next. It's coming up on News Talk 970 WBLF. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the paranormal, the investigation of it, and also the discussion about paranormal reality TV and what have you. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody.
And, of course, we are post-lockdown at the Clearfield County Jail, but since we record Mo Valley Paranormal in advance, we'll hold the details as to what happened until next week's Mo Valley Paranormal Live program.
Hopefully we can use the whole show to tell you about it.
Yes, that would be outstanding. So we have 2 paranormal reality TV shows that are currently airing. There are other paranormal shows, but not necessarily having to do with the investigations and that type of thing. So we're only talking about those. We're not talking about recreation shows or, you know, my girlfriend's ghost or whatever, whatever other programs are out there. So, and what we have is 2 going on. One is the Ghost Brothers. It's their 2nd season. And of course, the other is Ghost Adventures. And I did not get to see Ghost Adventures yet, but Tyson has. I have seen Ghost Brothers. We both have. And so we'll start with the Ghost Brothers, and they visited Old City Jail in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes.
And, of course, my initial reaction was, okay, which one of the previous or one of the other paranormal reality shows have been there? And then, of course, once
3.
The tour guy, really, the one that struck me was the Ghost Adventures guys, because once again, it was the the Zach Bagans calling out the demon because Lavinia Fisher, one of the inmates there who was hanged outside the courthouse, one of her last words was, do you guys have any messages for hell, because I'll personally take them there or whatever.
For the devil, because that was the big PSB 7 hit. She said, if any of you have any message for the devil, let me know, because I'm going to see him in a couple minutes. And I believe Zach said, who did you say you were going to see before you jumped off the platform? The PSB 7 said, in a woman's voice, the devil. And of course, everybody, went nuts. So,
yeah. And so those end up being the guys that I remember because of, I guess, the outrageous nature of their investigations. Because we've talked about this for whatever reason, and we have to assume that most networks and television programming people utilize focus groups. They'll let them sit down and watch an episode of a show, and they use it with fans, and it's like, what did you like about the show? What didn't you? What would make it better? And apparently the people that they've chosen to be in their focus group said it has to be demonic or we're not watching.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you think.
But Ghost Brothers haven't gone down the it has to be demonic road. They're just three guys having fun, going out doing paranormal and getting paid to go out and do, because I guarantee you, I mean, at the beginning of the show, they say that they're out doing investigating because they all had experiences as young, children or whatever.
Right.
They all had paranormal experiences, and that's why they're investigating. And that may be, let me give them credit and say that's true. But I'm pretty sure the three of them never did paranormal investigations prior to a network coming up to them and saying, hey, you guys want to do become ghost hunters? And they said, you paying? And the producer said, yep. And they said, we're in. And so here we go. Ghost Brothers at Old City Jail in Charleston, South Carolina. And as we just mentioned, John and Lavinia Fisher were accused serial killers and were executed there at the jail. This was they reviewed the history of it. And believe me, not that any jail was a walk in the park anywhere, but this one was one that you would not want to be locked up in because they were talking about they talk about overpopulation in prisons nowadays. Just imagine what this was like. You're locked in a cell, not very big, and there's 25 other people in there.
Yeah.
And in that one cell, you and 24 other people, and for you to go to the bathroom, they throw straw down on the floor. Really? Yep, that's what happened. So yes, you committed a crime, and those people really got to experience, I think, what certainly medieval times would have been considered a jail.
Right.
So at any rate, this jail hasn't been used as a jail since 1939, and their tour guide there told them 10,000 people had died there.
That really shocked me.
Yeah, me too. I don't think there's been, even some of the, poor farms or wherever I've seen paranormal groups, maybe a couple thousand.
I mean, I would, expect numbers like that from like Waverly Hills or something, like some massive, mental institution that you say, well, like 10,000 people died over, over so many years, but some little, county jail, that's ridiculous.
So that gives you an idea as to how bad these conditions were. And so there was, the guys eventually get a tour around the building. They find out about the second and third floor. Third floor seemed to be where the worst of the worst were kept. And the second floor was where Lavinia Fisher and her husband, John, were kept. So the guys begin their investigation up on the third floor. And they first ask if there was anyone there that wanted to say anything or do anything. And you hear this thud. Now, when I first heard it, I take notes on the show. I used to be able to just watch these shows for whatever reason. Now I have to take notes because we talk about
Right.
it every week.
Right.
But it sounded to me, Tyson, like something like a book fell off the shelf.
Yeah.
And what it ended up being was, and they had video of it, there was video evidence of a window being open when they first got up on the floor, and then it would be as you face the window from the inside, the right window went closed. And that was the noise that they heard. A bit of a thud, but then again, you know, you consider an old-time window, and sometimes that is the type of noise that you will get out of that. So that happened to them right off the bat there on the third floor. And there were also discussions about in that one room, in that one particular area, that woman was bitten, and she had bite marks. And this is something that's come up in paranormal investigating. I've seen the crews, and it's not necessarily the ones that favor demonic activity. And once again, we've talked about it's a spirit trying to get your attention, and that's a last resort, is resorting to something like biting someone or scratching someone. And so this woman was bitten, and also a teen was scratched on one of the tours that they had. You know, it's the old, and I'm not saying I want to necessarily experience being scratched by a spirit, but I know your reaction when you were scratched at the, when we did the investigation at the elementary school,
Right.
that you felt the heat. There's always that burning sensation that you get, and then you look at it. Someone will look at it for you, and even your son, as a matter of fact, at our last lockdown.
Yeah, he did.
experienced that.
That's right.
So that's something that's pretty normal when it comes to the scratching episodes that go on. So there were talks of that. So they had the window closed, and then they start to ask questions. And once again, they end up using a REM pod. That's not the weirdest one. Wait till we get to the next question and answer session. They also brought a Boo Bear. What's the official name of that product? Is it Boo Bear?
No, Boo Buddy.
Boo Buddy.
Boo Buddy.
Okay.
Made by Ghost Stop.
Okay. The Boo Buddy is there. It's a standard Boo Buddy, and the Ghost Brothers have nicknamed their Boo Buddy Gangsta Boo. Yes, they called it Gangsta Boo.
Gangsta Boo.
Yeah. So, at any case, this third floor, by the way, was also referred to as Mount Rascal, as goes on the old city jail. But they start to ask questions, and one of the things that's brought up, Dalen ends up asking, are you the spirit that only attacks women and children? And it's like the REM pod lights up, and they have an intelligent, or at least we'll accept it as what it is, that it wasn't edited, but they have an intelligent question and answer session, once again with a REM pod. That seems to be their go-to device in this current season, and it seems to be working, and it's completely different. I've never seen any paranormal group rely on a REM pod as a means of communication. Have you?
Yeah, I mean the ghost hunters have used it, especially towards the end, the last season. They did a lot of the REM pod stuff, but this seems to be their primary communication device, with the Ghost Brothers just using the REM pod for communication.
Yeah, and normally it's the type of thing that's set up and everybody walks away from it, and if there's activity and there's EMF that moves into the area where the REM pod is, it'll go off. More about Ghost Brothers and Ghost Adventures coming up on News Talk 970 WBLF. News Talk 970 WBLF. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation thereof. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody.
As part of the show every week, we review any current running paranormal reality TV shows, talking about Ghost Brothers as we headed to the commercial break, and the fact that the guys have chosen the REM pod as one of their major means of communications with the spirit world. Now, that being said, as Jawan and Marcus are doing an investigation, Dalen is back at control center that is set up, and he ends up seeing on the second floor pretty convincing shadow figure. I thought that was a pretty good piece of video that they had there.
Now, is that towards the end of the show?
Yeah, I was a little bit past the halfway point, and he's sitting there and he sees that, and then they end up getting serious about investigating the second floor.
Because I think I had to check out about midway, a little bit past midway. So last half of the show, I did not get a chance to see.
Okay. Well, and what happens, he sees that, and so they do happen to have a shadow detector in their arsenal of equipment, and there's not as much activity now on the third floor where they had focused their attention. So they end up going, Marcus and Dalen team up on the second floor, and Jawan goes down to the basement. And because Dalen had seen a shadow figure go by a doorway right in the area, by the way, they set up a static camera near where Lavinia's cell was. And so they put a shadow detector down on the floor. And we were just talking about them utilizing a REM pod for communications with the spirit world. And they end up using a shadow detector, which is the first time I have ever seen a paranormal investigating group utilize that particular piece of equipment for that purpose. And I think for good reason, because once I'm not sure exactly how the shadow detector works, other than it notices difference in the light. I'm sure what it does is it sits there and it establishes a base, and when it gets darker, it goes off. I don't think it's any much more than that.
Right. We have a couple versions of a shadow detector, and mostly they work pretty much, what you said. I have one that is built into a millimeter, one that just sits as its own shadow detector. And either one, you have to take a laser or a laser grid and shine it, into the indicator of the shadow detector that reads the light of the laser. Yeah. And if anything happens to block out, that laser, it reads that and the alarm goes off. Yeah, you're right. Usually, this is a static detection device where it's set somewhere where people have seen a shadow in a place, a house or business, what may be. And, if shadows are seen, up and down a hallway, then you would set the shadow detector at one end of the hallway, the laser at the other end, cast the laser down the hallway, and if anything, crosses that laser, you have a camera on that, it'll go off, and you have evidence, you had shadows. But usually, I've you don't hear about someone actually sitting there and using the shadow detector for a question and answer session.
So what they did was they just set it down on the floor in front of the entry into what would have been Lavinia's cell, and they set it down on the floor, and there's everything that Tyson just told you is not there. They just set it down on the floor. They begin asking it questions. It is interesting to note that it seems to be responding in an intelligent way to the questions that they're asking. An interesting one, if we're to believe the results from that shadow detector session that they had. They asked if it was Lavinia, and they got an affirmative type response for that. And then they asked, were you in heaven or hell? And they paused after each one. And then they said, or are you trapped? and there was nothing that happened for a short period, but then it went off before they got to another question. So was that the spirit of Lavinia Fisher saying that she was trapped there at the Old City Jail in Charleston? Maybe it was. The final thing they do is end up checking out. Jawan ends up going to the basement area, and Jawan checks out the basement area, and he, does have some activity down there. And finally, they try to test the theory of whether you could escape, because Lavinia and John tried to get out of the jail tying sheets together.
Right.
The old, if you want to get out of someplace, you tie a whole bunch of sheets together to get out. And they did find out that if you tie them together, that they actually, if you have enough of them, they're pretty strong. Jawan went outside and, did the, the old trying to go up a rope type of thing that you did in high school. And he tried that with the sheets and nothing snapped. They tied it off up in the Fisher's cell, and then, it was everything held up. When the Fishers tried it, and I have no idea how you're able to get out. They may have mentioned this, why there were no bars on the window to stop them from going out, so that they could even try tying sheets together as a way to escape out of the jail.
Maybe if they were high enough, they figured that you wouldn't try to jump out the window, so there was no need to have bars there.
Could have been. John ends up being injured in the escape attempt, and the sheets actually do give out, and so Lavinia doesn't even get a chance to try to escape out of the prison. So that was the last part, and of course the guys reached the conclusion that they're and which most paranormal groups that have been to the Old City Jail in Charleston have come to the same conclusion, that there is activity. There's paranormal activity at that old jail. And is it demonic? I don't think so. But there are some groups that may disagree with that. Speaking of those groups, let's move on. What happened on Ghost Adventures? You're going to bring me up to date as well as the audience here.
The Ghost Adventures crew was out in, now unlike Dave, I did not take notes. So I believe they were out in California. And it was called the Freak Show Murder House. And what it was, somebody, the guy and his wife who now own this house, are transforming this house into a museum of oddities and haunted objects, much like Zach has in Nevada, and John Zaffis and Elaine Warren all are famous for having these haunted museums of knickknacks with activity attached to them. Well, this guy is turning his house into a place like this. So, he has said that by bringing these things in, he has now stirred up the activity of this tragic event that happened there years before. And what had happened was there was a home invasion, and two men bound a married couple and shot them execution style in the bathroom of the house. Shot their son, who escaped to the attic and did survive the incident. But this tragic, terrible event happened in this house. So this guy said that his family was having all kinds of activity. His daughter was having terrible dreams that she was watching her parents die and couldn't help, and the son was having the same kind of dreams that he was saw his mother and father on their knees with their throats slit, but every time he would go to help them, he felt like he was being pulled back and couldn't help. So right away, Zach says there must be some demonic
demon,
this dark force that is holding these spirits here. And they bring in a psychic, and if you've listened to the show, we don't, and I don't, I'm not putting down psychics. I believe there are people out there with this ability. but he brings in a psychic, and she doesn't say, what happened there. She says, I'm feel tragedy. There's loss of life here. I feel like I can't get away. I'm trying to escape, but I can't get away. And she was like drawn to the bathroom where this happened. Well,
Okay.
Zach fills her in on what happened and whatnot, and then he decides that the best way to go is to try to have a seance
Oh,
to
jeez.
try to communicate with the spirits that may be there, because of all the haunted objects, and of course this dark energy which is holding everybody there. Like it's controlling them.
Well, it's a demon, for God's sake.
So they're using the paranormal puck, and it wasn't even really that. They didn't really do that much investigating, because most of the show is talking about the house and the walkthrough with the medium, and then the seance. And I mean, it looked cheesy. I mean, because she's sitting at one end of the table, and three of the guys are sitting at the side of the table, and Billy Tully, he's in the other room with the paranormal puck reading answers he's typing in as they're asking questions. And what does she pull out? She pulls out a crystal ball and
No.
puts it on the table. And I'm like, is this, it's like she's just, came from the county fair or something, like she's reading, fortunes or something. So that was kind of cheesy, but they asked
Down
questions.
to a minute, by the way.
Okay.
To a minute to go.
Thank goodness. They they ask questions and don't get, a whole lot of answers. And of course they get some answers, but then they start really stretching to try to make those answers relevant to the questions they're making. And I mean, the one part was he said he bought this haunted doll. And so what does Zach do? He has the best idea, but take the case off the doll and starts interviewing the doll like it's going to get answers, So, yeah, it was another big hit in the bag of hits for Ghost Adventures team. So.
All right. Ghost Adventures Saturday nights at 9. The Ghost Brothers are on Friday nights at 9. Ghost Brothers on on TLC, and Ghost Adventures on Travel Channel. That'll do it for this week's show, and we hope to have a lot to tell you about the Clearfield County Jail lockdown next week. Good night, folks.
Good night, folks.